Chapter 5 Part 2. Rain drummed a frantic rhythm on the corrugated plastic roof of the forgotten greenhouse. Tucked behind Harbor's End's community garden, it was a relic Robert Moretti had funded years ago, a place for kids to learn about native plants before Eleanor redirected foundation resources towards flashier projects. Now, it was a sanctuary of damp earth, overgrown ferns, and the sharp scent of mildew. The perfect place to hide a corroded box full of ghosts. Angela wiped condensation from the inside of a grimy pane, peering out into the downpour. Anthony knelt on the cracked concrete floor, the metal box open before him. Ben's notebooks, the microfilm canisters, and the ominous source vials lay carefully arranged on a spread of clean burlap sacks. Mrs. Henderson stood sentinel by the door, her arms crossed, her expression a mix of grim resolve and profound unease. "She seated it," Anthony repeated, his voice low, hollow. He traced the label on one vial with a gloved finger. The neoprene sleeve on his left arm seemed to pulse faintly where the scars lay beneath. Like planting a bomb. Only this bomb grew thorns and poison mines. He picked up the top notebook from Ben's stack. He suspected for months. Tracked shipments. Faked credentials to access foundation archives in Costa Rica. Found soil analysis reports, genetic markers, all pointing back to the research station. They weren't just studying plants. They were designing them. Weaponizing biodiversity. Angela crouched beside him, the damp chill of the greenhouse seeping through her clothes. The crystalline structures in the vials? Part of the engineered organism, Anthony said, pointing to Ben's meticulous sketches. Ben called them mineral catalysts, designed to interact with specific bedrock compositions like the ferrous basalt here. They forced the mutation, accelerated the bioalkaloid production, turned a potential discovery into a predictable poison factory. He tapped the vial. This isn't just the precursor. It's the blueprint, the dormant seed of everything that came after. Mrs. Henderson shifted, her boots scraping on the concrete. So that witch didn't just stumble on a nasty plant. She made the nasty plant happen, made Split Rock bleed for her profit. Her voice was thick with disgust. "What do we do with this blueprint?" "We need to understand it," Angela said, her mind racing. "Before someone else does. If Eleanor had collaborators, if this source material exists elsewhere." Exactly. Anthony opened one of Ben's notebooks to a page filled with complex chemical notations and maps. Ben believed Costa Rica wasn't the only site. He mentions Project Verdengraft, trials in Indonesia, Norway, places with unique geology. He was compiling evidence when Anthony trailed off, the unspoken when Eleanor silenced him hanging heavy in the humid air. He gestured to the microfilm canisters. "These are his insurance. Satellite imagery, lab reports, financial trails linking the stations to Eleanor's private accounts. Proof of the global network." "We need to see it," Angela said. "Megan can help. She has access to Doc Evans' old microfilm reader at the library annex. It's dusty, but it works." Anthony nodded, carefully repacking the microfilm and Ben's notebooks into a waterproof dry bag he'd brought. He hesitated over the source files. We can't risk moving them yet. Not until we know more. They feel." He shivered, not from the cold. "Active. Even dormant." "They stay here," Mrs. Henderson declared, her tone brooking no argument. She moved a cluster of large terracotta pots filled with dormant berry bushes, revealing a hollow space beneath the sturdy wooden bench they sat on. "Buried. In dry sand. Robert showed me this spot years ago. Said it was a time capsule for special seeds. Fitting, ain't it?" They carefully buried the oilcloth-wrapped vials in the cool, dry sand beneath the bench, covering them completely before replacing the pots. The mundane act felt like a funeral for something profoundly unnatural. "Right," Mrs. Henderson said, brushing sand from her hands. "You two get that film to Megan. I'll keep watch here. Rotate the guard with Old Man Peters later. Harbor's End watches its secrets now." She fixed them with a stern look. "And you," she pointed a finger at Anthony. "Get that arm checked. You're pale as a grub, boy." Anthony managed a weak smile. "Yes, ma'am." The Harbor's End Community Fund office, housed in the refurbished bookstore basement, felt like a war room. Maps of the cleanup progress covered one wall. Whiteboards tracked grant applications and medical reimbursements funded by the Benjamin and Robert Moretti Fund. Megan sat hunched over a clunky, decades-old microfilm reader, the machine whirring and clicking as she advanced frames. The ghostly images projected onto the small screen were stark, aerial shots of dense, jumbled clearings with suspiciously geometric structures, shipping manifests with blacked-out contents, lab reports, stamped Project Verdant Graft, classified. Norway checks out, Megan muttered, zooming in on a topographic map overlaid with soil mineral markers. Geothermal vent region. Perfect for forcing heat-sensitive mutations. Indonesia, volcanic soil, high mineral content. She flipped to another frame, a grainy photo of Eleanor Moretti shaking hands with a man in a white coat in front of a nondescript building marked Moretti Biological Research Station, Costa Rica. Ben was right. It's a network. She wasn't just making one poison, she was field-testing prototypes globally. Angela paced, the rust-streaked stone a comforting weight in her pocket. Anthony sat nearby, ostensibly reviewing a grant proposal, but his gaze was distant. He kept flexing the fingers of his left hand, a grimace tightening his features. The neoprene sleeve seemed tighter. "Anthony," Angela asked softly. "Your arm?" He startled, as if pulled from deep thought. It's nothing. Stiff. From the beach." But the pallor Mrs. Henderson had noted was worse, a sheen of sweat on his forehead despite the basement's cool air. He rubbed his forearm through the sleeve. "Just phantom pains. Doc Evans says it's normal." Megan paused the microfilm, peering at him. "You look like you've seen a ghost, Moretti. And not the friendly Harbor's End kind." Anthony pushed himself up, wincing slightly. "I need air. Just for a minute." He headed for the stairs leading up to the bookstore, his movements stiff. Angela exchanged a worried glance with Megan. "Keep going. I'll check on him." She found Anthony outside, leaning against the rain-slicked brick wall of the bookstore, head bowed, breathing deeply. The rain had lessened to a drizzle, the streetlights casting long, watery reflections on the pavement. "Talk to me," Angela said, stopping beside him. He didn't look up. "It's the vials," he whispered. "Even buried, I can feel them, like a vibration. In the scars." He lifted his left arm slightly, the neoprene sleeve seeming to pulse faintly under the streetlight. "It's not pain. Not exactly. It's an echo. A pull. Towards the greenhouse." He finally met her eyes, his own filled with a haunted dread. Ben wrote about it. In the later notes. He called it resonance. Said exposure to the toxin or its source created a sensitivity. A link. He felt it too, towards the end. Like the poison left a homing beacon in his blood. He shuddered. "She didn't just engineer the plant, Angela. She engineered us to be its markers. Its receptors." The horror was visceral. Eleanor's control extended beyond the ecological. It was biological, written into the victims of her toxin. Angela touched his arm gently, feeling the unnatural warmth radiating through the neoprene. "We'll figure this out. We have Ben's proof. We'll expose the network, shut it down." Anthony leaned into her touch, seeking an anchor. What if it's already active elsewhere? What if the source isn't dormant? What if it's just waiting? His gaze drifted towards the dark shape of the community garden and the greenhouse beyond. "The roots she planted, they run deeper than we ever knew." A sudden crash came from inside the bookstore, the sound of shattering glass, followed by Megan's sharp cry. "Megan!" Angela whirled, rushing for the basement door, Anthony close behind, his pain momentarily forgotten in the surge of adrenaline. They burst into the fund office. The microfilm reader was knocked over. Glass from its shattered viewing screen littered the floor. Megan stood backed against a filing cabinet, clutching her arm, staring in shock at the open window. Rain blew in through the broken pane. "They came through the window," Megan gasped, pointing. "Two of them, all in black. They went straight for Ben's records." She gestured to the filing cabinet labeled B, Moretti, archives. The drawer was hanging open, files spilled onto the floor. They grabbed something. A folder. Thick, manila. Then they heard you coming and bolted back out the window. Angela rushed to the cabinet, sifting through the scattered papers. Grant drafts, meeting minutes. Nothing seemed immediately crucial. Then her blood ran cold. The thick folder containing the original, unprocessed negatives from Ben's microfilm, the master copies before Megan made working duplicates, was gone. Anthony stood frozen near the broken window, rain dampening his hair. He wasn't looking at the mess. He was staring at the floor near the overturned microfilm reader. A single footprint, clear in the scattered dust and glass fragments. The tread pattern was distinctive, aggressive, deep lugs. Not Harbor's end work boots. Military grade. His hand went to his left forearm, the scars burning with a sudden, fierce intensity beneath the neoprene. The resonance wasn't just pulling him towards the greenhouse anymore. It was screaming a warning. The roots Eleanor planted hadn't just run deep. They'd sprouted thorns. And someone was pruning the evidence. The blueprint wasn't the only thing dormant, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. Her network, it's awake. He looked at Angela, the storm from Split Rock back in his eyes. And they know we have Ben's map. The Titapool they'd stumbled into wasn't just murky. It was teeming with predators. The engineered roots of Eleanor Moretti's empire were reaching up from the grave, and they'd just snatched Ben's evidence from their grasp. The quiet after the storm was officially over.